When a woman stops looking, something changes in a man. She doesn't always say it, but she feels it. And the funny thing is that often it's only then that he starts to think, because while she insists, he feels secure. But when she keeps quiet, when she disappears, when she stops being available, the man is faced with something he doesn't know how to handle: emptiness. And in that emptiness, his mind begins to speak. Today, I'm going to tell you what happens inside a man when a woman distances herself. Not out of pride, but from the deepest psychology. Because sometimes a woman's silence has more power than 1,000 words. At first, he feels bewilderment. When a woman stops looking for him, a man doesn't understand anything at first. He's used to a certain emotional routine. The messages, the gestures, the attention, that feminine energy that keeps him at the center of something. And when suddenly that fades away, he doesn't interpret it as a limit or a decision, but as a mistake, and he thinks it's a pause, not an absence. He tells himself, she's probably busy. She'll write later. This will fix itself. Because for many men, as long as the woman is present, even if it is just demanding, they feel they still have control. But when the silence drags on, the man begins to feel something he can't put into words. Confusion? He doesn't know if he did something wrong, if he lost her, or if he's simply being punished with distance. And since he has no answers, he starts searching for explanations in his head. The male mind, faced with emptiness, doesn't stay still. It invents hypotheses, memories, excuses. And in that confusion, discomfort arises, an internal feeling that unsettles him. The female silence disarms his logic because up until that moment, he felt he was in control of the dynamic, that he could decide when to get closer and when to distance himself. But suddenly, it's she who takes control with her absence, and that hurts more than many admit, because the habit of being sought out generates a kind of invisible power, the power of feeling needed, of knowing that there's always someone waiting for him on the other side. When that power disappears, something breaks. And that's when doubt appears, which is the gateway to fear. Fear of not being enough, of having been replaced, of having lost the place he thought was safe. It's not yet love that he feels, it's disorientation. But that's the first step, because the man begins to confront something he doesn't know how to handle: the emptiness left by a woman who no longer seeks him. And that emptiness often says more than 1,000 words. Then comes the blow to the ego. When a woman walks away, a man doesn't feel sadness at first. He feels a blow to his ego. It's not his heart that reacts first, it's his pride. Because the male ego often feeds, without him even realizing it, on female attention, on that look, on that message, on that feeling, often that feeling of knowing he's important to someone. And when that suddenly disappears, the emptiness isn't emotional, it's identity-based. He begins to ask himself questions, but not from a place of tenderness, but from a place of hurt. Who is she with? Why doesn't she seek me? What did I do wrong? Or worse yet, what did I do so well that now she doesn't need me anymore? And those questions don't seek answers. They seek control, because the ego can tolerate the idea of having lost influence over someone who once admired or waited for him. Or a woman's silence activates a kind of mirror in a man, that reflects not his love but his insecurity. Because although few admit it, men also need to feel chosen, and when they no longer choose him, they feel that something inside is out of control. They don't understand if he's failed, or if he simply no longer has that emotional power that used to make him feel invincible. And then that confusing mix of anger, nostalgia, and wounded pride appears. Some react with indifference, or so they pretend. And I don't care, they say, it's her loss. But behind closed doors, that discourse falls short, because behind the I don't care is usually a man who doesn't know how to process having stopped mattering. The male ego confuses attention with affection. He feels loved as long as they search for him, then forgotten once they stop. But love doesn't disappear with silence. What disappears is the privilege of control. And that's what unsettles him the most. Not because he doesn't love her, but because he suddenly stops feeling valuable. And for many men, losing that symbolic value hurts more than losing love itself. right? Then and there, the man isn't missing the woman. He's trying to recover his reflection, the reflection of feeling important, admired, needed. Only later, when his ego fades a bit, will he be able to discover if he really misses her, or if he simply misses how it felt to be loved by her. The next thing that happens is that the internal review begins. After the confusion and the blow to the ego comes the silence. That silence that's not just external, but internal. When there are no more messages, excuses, or distractions, the man begins to be alone with his mind, and that's when everything changes. He begins to remember, not in an idealized way at first, but almost with guilt. He remembers those moments when she spoke and he didn't listen at all, when she asked for closeness and he offered distance, when she insisted and he acted indifferent. It acted indifferent. And little by little, those images begin to weigh on him because he realizes something. What he lost wasn't attention, it was presence. There are no longer messages waiting for him, nor a gaze searching for him. And that emptiness that at first the ego would read now begins to touch his soul. Sometimes, without wanting to, he reviews old conversations, photos, memories, wants to return to the past, but because he is trying to understand when he disconnected, he begins to recognize the gestures that he previously overlooked. A sweet word, a genuine concern, a silence full of love, all that he didn't value when he was around her. And then a question appears that changes everything. Do I miss her, or do I miss how I felt with her? Because many times, men don't miss the woman herself so much as the reflection that she awakened in him, that more alive, more secure, more emotionally connected version of himself, the one that only appeared when he was with her. That question, even though it hurts, marks the beginning of something important: self-awareness, self-awareness. The man begins to look at himself, not to justify himself, but to understand himself. He begins to recognize that perhaps, without realizing it, he sabotaged something that gave him meaning. And that's when he stops looking for someone to blame outside and starts looking inward, where a small emotional awakening begins. Not everyone reaches that point. Sure, some remain in pride or denial, but those who manage to enter that silence without running away from it discover that love is not all lost, sometimes it simply becomes a lesson. And that lesson, if listened to honestly, can mark the beginning of a new way of loving. The next thing is that he feels curious and anxious. When the silence drags on and she gives no sign, the man enters a different stage, that of curiosity mixed with anxiety. He starts looking at his phone more frequently, opens social media, checks to see if she's seen his stories, if she's changed her profile picture, if she's uploaded something new. Every little detail becomes a clue, a way to feel that there's still some kind of connection. And even though he doesn't say it, not even to himself, he begins to live in a kind of silent vigilance, not because he necessarily wants to return, but because he can't quite tolerate the idea of having lost his place. There's something deeply human and also primitive in that. The desire to continue being important to someone who no longer needs you. Men can stand to feel replaceable, especially not by someone else's decision. So they look for signs. They wonder if she's with someone else, if she's forgotten him, if she thinks about him. And in that constant search for answers, they're not really looking to find out about her. They're looking to reassure their own fear, the fear that they've stopped being important, the fear. Because when a woman stops searching, something inside a man becomes unsettled. His identity stops feeling validated. That anxiety isn't always shown outwardly. Many continue to act indifferently, even posting things to pretend that they're fine, that they've moved on with their lives. But behind that apparent calm is a mind checking every hour to see if she showed up, if she reacted, if she gave any sign, and if nothing appears garnish. The discomfort grows on until almost without thinking about it. The impulse arrives, the brief message, the hello that says nothing, but in reality says everything. It is the attempt to break the silence without losing dignity, the gesture disguised as coincidence, that deep down is a way of asking, am I still in your world? Because at that point, what moves him is not so much love, but the need to feel visible again, put in. And the feminine silence the one he underestimated before, becomes an uncomfortable mirror, one that forces to recognize that perhaps he was not as indispensable as he thought, and that this time the control is not in his hand, the eluku is not in his hands. And then the memory begins to hurt. When the man finally understands that she is not going to return, something inside changes its tone. Silence stops being a strategy and becomes nostalgia. There is no longer any expectation or power play, only an absence that begins to hurt seriously. He begins to remember things that did not seem important to him before. Her voice, for example, appears at the most unexpected moments. A song, a scent, a phrase. Everything becomes an echo that connects him to what he lost. And the brain that has always tried to maintain control through logic enters into conflict because reason to conflict. Because reason tells it, that's it, continue on your path. But emotion murmurs, I need her. And that contradiction unsettles him, because the man is used to solving problems, not inhabiting them. The memory becomes more vivid than the presence, the stranger in the small gestures, in how she looked at him when he said nothing, in how she calmed him with a single word. He begins to notice that what he had with her was not simple company, it was connection. And that shakes him, because it is not easy to accept that this connection cannot be replaced. At that point, the man no longer seeks attention or control. He seeks relief, but he does not find it, because there is no message, no outing with friends, no distraction that can cover up what he really feels, the loss. The absence gets under his skin and begins to weigh on him, and each attempt to forget her brings her back to mind with more force. The most disconcerting thing for many is realizing that this pain has no immediate solution. It cannot be fixed with logic or resolved with another person, and then they begin to face something new for them, vulnerability. That feeling that no matter how much one tries to control it, there are emotions that simply must be overcome. There, the memory ceases to be an idea. It becomes a body, a sensation, an emptiness. And the man understands, perhaps for the first time, that when a woman truly leaves, she does not just take her presence with her, iato. She takes with her the calm that he felt when he was with her, narro. The next thing is that the comparison begins. When the man feels that she is not really coming back, an attempt to escape appears, to look for replacements, salikun. He goes out, meets other women, talks, distracts himself. Sometimes he does it consciously, like, I have to forget her. And other times, as an automatic reflex of the ego that needs to prove to itself that it can move on. But sooner or later, emptiness appears, because no look is the same, no laugh sounds the same, and no presence manages to occupy exactly that emotional space that she left. Oh, at first, he convinces himself that all he needs is time or fun. He thinks movement will save him, but the more he tries to distract himself, the more evident it becomes that there is something that cannot be replaced so easily. He begins to compare. He does not do it with bad intentions, nor is it always conscious, but he does it. He compares how she looked at him, how she made him feel, how her presence gave him a calm that he cannot find now. And each comparison unintentionally takes him to the same point. No new connection can have the same depth. There he understands something that not all men dare to recognize, that love cannot be replaced with companionship, that not all presence is calm and absence, and that sometimes the body can be with someone, but the soul continues looking back. That is the quietest part of the process, because on the outside it seems that he has moved on with his life, but on the inside he is measuring emotional distances, and in that constant comparison he begins to see more clearly what he lost. It was not just a woman, it was a feeling of being understood, at peace, seen. A man may take his time, he may get distracted, he may resist, but when the connection was real, when there was sincere love, he ends up comparing, and almost always loses in that comparison, because no matter how much he denies it, he knows that some women leave marks that do not fade with time. They are only learned to be carried with a certain nostalgia that never completely goes away, muna. And if he loved her, he begins to truly value her. When everything quiets down, when there are no more messages, no more signs, no more hope that she will return, the most uncomfortable and most revealing moment arrives. Silence becomes a mirror, and that is when a man begins to see clearly what he previously denied or did not want to see. It is no longer about a wounded ego or a broken habit. It is something else. It is understanding. He begins to understand that true value is not in the one who stays begging, but in the one who knew how to live in time. That the woman who one day decided not to insist anymore did not do so because she stopped feeling, but because she began to respect herself. And that, even though he doesn't say it, hits him hard because for the first time he realizes that she didn't leave to punish him, she left to take care of herself. Alla feri valore. That's where the paradox appears. The more he values her, the less likely he is to get her back. And that leaves its mark on him. He begins to remember her gestures, her care, her silences, and understands that she was truly there. Until he stopped noticing, only then does he realize that love is not sustained by a constant presence, but by reciprocity, that love does not die from lack of passion, but from indifference. Many men only learn to love when a woman stops doing it for them because absence, when there are true feelings, becomes a teacher and teaches what routine and comfort have prevented us from seeing, that nothing is guaranteed, that attention is not a right, and that an I love you without care is not